Wait,
Hello, everybody.
what?
Welcome back to some more Overwatch League Pick'ems. First, before we get into the first week of the summer showdown, let's get into the mid-season madness. The tournament itself. So it went kind of as a lot of us expected. At least a bit of how I personally expected it. We saw the Shock pretty much sweep through the. We saw the Shock sweep through winners bracket for the most part. Lost a map to the Spitfire, and did they even lose a map to anyone else? I mean, they lost two maps to Glads in winners round three, but other than that, they swept through. They did a pretty good job at getting to the grand finals. But one thing that was really surprising was Gladiators actually being able to pick up the victory in the end. It was quite a match, and was
Yeah,
filled with a lot of unexpected moments.
uh-huh. I think that a lot of the moments inside the match were not how I was expecting to go. I think, most people either thought it was going to be a sweep from one team or like a map 7 like hard clash in between those two, but it ended up just kind of looking like a sweep at the beginning because the Shock were just making a lot of mistakes uh as they put in the Gladiators post interview. The Shock was just making up a lot more mistakes than Gladiators were, and that's why the Shock won the game before. But I think Gladiators really cleaned up their act and were able to take an early take an early lead. But you know, I think Shock was able to pick up, where they were before this match, and they were like actually looking pretty decent.
But then Charles came
But
in. Good old
well,
Charles the Ninth.
yeah, they were did look like they were running Dorado pretty well. They pushed it really far, almost the second thing. And unfortunately, comms mis uh, you know, the comms miscommunication happens, and then kind of just go off the cart. And then, the rest is history, and the Glads get their back to back. But who knows what would have happened if Dorado went on?
Yeah, I
We really
I
don't.
honestly could see Shock winning that if it wasn't for for not one but two C9s on their part. But it was just overall a really good match and just kind of really weird to see the Shock because honestly, in my opinion, they performed really poorly in this match. I think that they really were just kind of not on the top of their game for this, and it was really surprising to see that a team that has been so dominant, especially in this tournament, dropping only three maps beforehand, would just kind of lose so like poorly. And in the two maps that Shock took, they still were very close games. So really, I feel like Shock easily could have been swept here, but I think it was just kind of a close game that Glaz just had the upper hand in the entire way through. But now, as we enter in, we are going into the summer showdown. So first, before we get into week one predictions, what are your crystal ball picks for this tournament? Who do you think is going to make it to the tournament?
I think that's going to be kind of easy. Well, I mean, I could just go with like, do I want to make it easy or do I want to make it hard on myself? I was just going to make it easy on myself. Just go with the two finalists.
Yeah, that does make sense. That is an easy one to go with. Go with the Glaz and the Shock for West region. However, there's been a couple team mix-ups here that could really kind of shift how teams play here.
Yeah.
For example,
Well,
what?
I think, I mean, yeah, but most of the team mix-ups could make it like to where some of them like actually might like come out. Like some of the teams that like have made roster changes over uh the break, it could end up being not really good for them, so who knows?
I mean,
So
we
I'm
saw
just going with the same picks.
just today we've seen two teams get roster shakeups. That being the Houston Outlaws picking up Lep and Doge, which is still pending league approval. I'm not sure if it's going to be able to be pulled off during this weekend or not. But we also saw the New York Excelsior randomly drop Myungbong to pick up on Sunjae who had
It
been
wasn't
on.
randomly.
Yeah, it just kind of felt. I don't know. To me, it
Well, I
felt.
mean, it was randomly to Myungbong, but
Yeah.
not random to everyone else.
So Nixel has a new member of the team. We have Outlaws who have two new team players. We still are kind of unsure on where Pelican, Iris, and Piggy are in here.
It,
What
it
roles are
sounds like they're
Lep
good.
and Doge? That's my question because
Uh,
I actually don't know.
I'm pretty sure one of those is a main tank. I know that for sure, and I think the other one's a support.
Yeah, so it does seem like they might be making a deal
I know.
to send off Piggy and Iris, who they were having as a joint pair in their attempts to drop them off the roster, which uh, we're yet to see on how this might affect the Houston Outlaws. But I mean, just because of that, like as much as I would love to kind of go with my boys, the Houston Outlaws, in one of these decisions, I'm just going with the two safe picks, the Los Angeles Gladiators and the San Francisco Shock, like you are. But for East
Yeah,
Region, here's
and
where it
plus,
gets a little
plus
bit
you
more
get bonus
interesting.
points for a winner, so it doesn't make
Exactly.
any sense to not go. Because those are the only teams that really normally have a chance.
Plus, also we have to put into perspective here. The Summer Showdown is going to be a regional tournament, meaning the West Region will be playing West Region only, and East Region will be playing East Region only. The West Region will be taking place in Toronto, so hey, if Toronto fight get into the tournament, who knows? They might have that home field advantage. So it really could go anywhere. But all jokes aside, because we all know Toronto won't do that. East region, is it really just like Seoul, Spark, Dragons, like one of those, two of those three?
I'm putting the fusion in with it. I know. Okay, I know that the fusion are a little iffy when it comes to like their regular season performance, but it is bonus points for winner, and I think in a regional, if they play like they did last tournament, I think they should be good.
Yeah, because
So I'm just gonna
they
pick
didn't they
fusion.
win? Didn't they go uh undefeated in the kickoff clash? I believe they
Who?
did. Quickly go look back at that. East region. Yeah. Oh no, they went to the finals and got swept by the Dynasty. So that could happen
Yeah.
again. Or Fusion could finally get a championship for the first time ever.
Now is the time. All the signs are pointing.
Or personally myself, I'm going with the Dynasty and the Spark. I think that Spark is just a solid team to go with. And Seoul is it's the equivalent of the Gladiators and the Shock for the East region. I think it's pretty obvious that you would want to go with them. But again, Shanghai, Fusion, there are two viable options. As and this might be weird to say, but I honestly think the Valiant as well. I think the Valiant do have an opportunity to perform this tournament.
They're
It's just a
still
matter of
not.
time.
I still don't think they're up to the level of the four. I think like I think the hunters are probably like gatekeeping right now, even though there's not many teams to gatekeep.
You're literally just gatekeeping the Guangzhou Charge and the Los Angeles Valiant.
Pretty much. They're
But
doing their
go,
job and they're doing their job well.
but going on to the West region here, to start off the tournament, we have the Florida Mayhem and the London Spitfire. Both of these teams had fairly lackluster performances in the tournament, I feel. Because I actually need a refresher because it's been a while since I talked about it. London, they had a dominant victory over the Atlanta Reign, while the Mayhem got completely swept by the Outlaws, and they actually were able to beat the Spark, and then went down to the Fusion. Uh, I mean, really, I guess you could technically say that the Spitfire had or the Mayhem had a better run, but really, I think that when it just comes down to it, the Spitfire are just a better team.
Yeah, this is gonna be it is a new meta, and this one is vastly different from the other one,
Yeah,
I
Junker
think.
Queen, I think, is really gonna shake it up, and
The J-
it's
the
kind of
Jotes meta now.
huh?
They're calling it Jotes now.
But what I was saying was it's really going to showcase whose tank players are the most versatile, and it's been kind of obvious that the Spitfire's tank line has been very flexible. Um, Hottie being able to play a wide variety of tank heroes, and then Paco being able to pick up what Hottie can't play. And then
I
you just
think
have someone who really can only play Winston, and if it's not a Winston meta, someone just kind of flounders, and it just brings the entire Florida Mayhem down.
I feel like that London would be like good because I think any of their tanks could pick up Junker Queen easily, and I think the supports. I think there's not really like any room for flex supports, which I think Florida Mayhem only have two right now, so they're kind of banking on double flex meta, and that's just not happening right now.
But now going on, we have a two of them. Well, the two teams that we were just talking about, the New York Excelsior and the Houston Outlaws, two teams with big roster changes. How well do you think Asunje is really going to be able to affect this team?
Well, I think Insunja is going to be a massive improvement based on the meta we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of Lucio, and that's kind of what he's going to be in play for. If they didn't get a main support this season, they'd be screwed. Like, they'd be easily worse than Vancouver this tournament because the Lucio is going to be so important in this meta, along with the Junker Queen, to speed the Junker Queen in. But then again, we have the Houston Outlaws who looks to be, you know, it's just a more standard team. It's the safer bet. I'm not all in on this Nixel roster just yet, even
Yeah,
though they got a better pickup.
yeah, I do have to agree with you. As much as I do have faith in this New York Excelsior squad, uh, Houston, I think, is a team that really just doesn't care what your meta is. They're just gonna play what they feel like and still dominate. And that all just kind of banks on Dante's Doomfist and Piggy's Sigma. And honestly,
I don't think we're gonna be seeing Dante. We're not gonna see Dante Doomfist anymore. I think, with the leaks that have been happening, it seems like Dante's gonna be moved on back to main DPS.
yeah, especially since they are trying to get rid of Pelican. I think they're, especially when you see that they pick up Lep and Doge, it does seem like they're going for uh, a more
Standard approach.
Western, a more
Yeah.
Western approach, and so it would make sense that they would get rid of Pelican, Piggy, and uh, Iris, whatever. It would seem like they would very clearly get rid of those three, so that way they could play more of a Western kind of roster. So it definitely could. Who knows how this goes? So we'll just have to see. This might. I think this match is honestly going to showcase how well a team can perform under a new meta. Because New York and Houston have both stumbled quite hard with metas, but they've also been defining the meta more in Houston's case. So it's definitely something that could happen. I think Houston definitely has potential to be a dominant force, regardless of if they have Lep and Doge this week or not. On to another exciting matchup, I feel, is the Dallas Fuel and the LA Gladiators. Again, a difficult one for me to predict. What about you?
Well, I think Gladiator's gonna win this because they haven't really lost a match ever since two reverse sweeps yet. And, the tournament matches, but I'm not really counting those. I'm just pretty much basing off the regular season. And I think no matter what meta comes their way, the Gladiators are gonna have an answer for it. But Dallas Fuel is a team that likes to shape their own meta. I think that's what's gonna get them because they're never just a team to play the standard meta and be good at it like rest of the teams are. They always try to find some more unique ways to deal with the opposition. I don't think you can do that as much as you could with the other two metas. I think this meta is going to be much more cut and dry, and there's probably going to be a lot less deviation. I think you'll probably be able to play like the Sigma and stuff like that in Circuit Royale, but I think it's mostly just gonna be Junker Queen Jotes.
Yeah, I see that. And really, I think this could also just be a meta that though that Hanbin just kind of thrives in. I feel like Hanbin's definitely going to be a very good Junker Queen player, but again, that's not anything that we've seen so far. So it definitely could be a Dallas game in my opinion, but I think that it is the safer option to go with the Gladiators. Here's a very cut and dry match. We have the Atlanta Rain and the Boston Uprising. Uh, can Boston even take a map against Atlanta?
Um, yes, they can. I think. Maybe. I think they take a map, yes. Boston, they're a solid team, but they just don't have any like
They're way too
like they can take a
inconsistent.
map. They just don't have any like enough star power, I feel. Like it's just kind of they go in and they don't have enough firepower really. Like that's what's really preventing this team from becoming like a contender. They just don't really have any feats or accomplishments. And I don't think any other players are really star at any of the characters that would be meta right now. And I think Rain can probably thrive off it because I think Ultraviolet and OG, I think it's going to be a beautiful uh, composition for them. I think you probably put any like Hawk maybe on Junker Queen. I feel like that'd be a good composition. So I
Yeah,
think
I
Rain will have another.
this ain't gonna be no Gator meta. Gator ain't getting playtime. He's warming that bench up real nice. Here we have the Shock and the Justice. Uh,
I wouldn't want to be the Justice.
yeah, neither would
Nope.
I. Uh, now the Summer Showdown is a very important tournament right now for the Shock. Because
It's even more important for the Justice too, but I that doesn't matter more. That really doesn't matter when you're facing the Shock after they've just fumbled the tournament.
and while
This
they're
is like
on their way to making Overwatch League history by setting a new undefeated record in the uh what's it the regular season. Shock are I think at 13 win no how many it was 15
higher
right
than
yeah
that.
15 maybe I don't remember. I know that they are just a couple wins away from beating Vancouver's 2019 record. Their last matchup is the Los Angeles Gladiators and the San Francisco Shock. If on week 2, if the Gladiators beat the Shock tie Vancouver's record. However, if Vancouver, not if Vancouver, but if the Gladiators lose to the Shock sets a new record. It really is just kind of a thing of will the Shock be able to uh, clutch out that record? Because Nixel's their true ending, but it's Nixel. They're gonna beat Nixel.
I mean, right
So
now we're talking about Shock and Justice, so we can
yeah,
talk about that
I
later.
mean, I kind of want to like showcase what the Shock have to fight for this tournament, as well as to get their salty run back against the Gladiators in the regional tournament.
But
So
there really isn't much to talk about with the Justice match. The
yeah,
Justice had like they haven't made any changes, any necessary changes. Like, what are they gonna? They need to learn that just star power isn't enough to make a team go. We've seen that with multiple versions of like the Toronto Viant, I feel. And even with the Justice Squad from last year, like it wasn't enough to just have these big names on your roster. Like you need like excellent coaching, which I feel like the Justice just don't have at the moment. And I think when it comes against a juggernaut team like a Shock, there's not really much they can do.
yeah, no, I don't even think Vancouver. Not I'm. I don't think the Justice is gonna be taking a map off of Shock at all. I think this is just gonna be a 3-0. Another match that seems pretty easy to predict is Toronto and Vancouver. Uh, yeah. Uh, it's whether or not Vancouver can have a close game against the Defiant because both teams are not very good. But it is very clear which team is a lot better, and that is the
It
Toronto
just
Defiant.
it depends on how much Vancouver improves because they do look like they're improving somewhat. I just don't know like how like steady they're improving right now. Because Toronto Defiant isn't really a team. They're like the Justice. They don't really improve that much. They just kind of stay where they are, and they don't really make a lot of changes. And I think if Vancouver have, thought things over and, tried to improve, they could they could take it to the Toronto Defiant. I just don't think they've gone that far yet. Like I think they still need to work some things out. They're still kind of at this bottom level right now. That's hard to climb out. So they could take a map, I think, but Toronto Defiant should have an easy one.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Next up is London and Boston. I think again it's just an easy one to predict. I think that London's going to take this, and honestly, I think London's going to 3-0 the Boston Uprising.
I have no really else to say.
So next up, then, Justice in Paris. I mean, as much as I want to put faith in Paris, they're just not good. However, I do think that they can take a map off the Justice just because the Justice are very prone to fumbling matches very easily. But I don't think Paris is going to be able to win.
Yeah, I hope we don't get another situation like a Vancouver match. Like, that seems like such a Justice thing, but then again, I think Justice should be able to have it. Like, cause for once they're the safer team to pick. Cause I think Paris still are at a lower level, and I don't really think a meta shift or anything can really change that.
Although again,
So
like you said, the Vancouver match that easily could go that way. And unlike Vancouver, Paris is honestly a better team than Vancouver. So it could go that way in the Paris Eternal, but it just seems more likely that it would go to the favor of the Justice. To end off Saturday, there is the LA Gladiators and the Houston Outlaws. I
yeah,
mean,
this match seems like kind of a blowout, if I'm gonna be honest. I
I
think
gotta
the Gladiators are
disagree.
gonna have it.
I honestly have to disagree. I do think that Houston, they're not going to take it as a very close game, but I definitely think that Houston has what it takes to take at least a map off the Gladiators.
I think there's a massive skill gap in between the two teams. I think anyone that isn't like in the upper echelon, like the Shock or the Fuel of the Rain, I think they're just gonna get like stomped on. Like they're just in the Gladiators' way at this moment. The Gladiators are just the best team in this region.
Yeah, they definitely are, and it is definitely my favoritism of the Houston Outlaws that makes me want to be able to give them a map. It's not likely, but it's my favoritism coming in, which I'm not gonna hide. So speaking of Paris and Vancouver, as
Oh,
I was talking about in the Justice match, uh,
oh,
yeah,
Nixel robbed us of the funnest game ever. I'm just saying that right now. Because
oh,
Paris got their win. But this match, this
looks
still is gonna
winnable.
be a fun one, I feel like. Because it's not like that win really means anything when it's up against Nixel. They're still both pretty bad teams. And I feel like Vancouver could have probably beaten Nixel on the same day. Because like those three teams are just kind of at the same level at the moment.
Yeah, this is where it really gets difficult to predict because neither team is good whatsoever. However, it just is a matter of what team can be able to pick up this meta better, and just who can take advantage of the other better. Which it's hard to say. It really really is. Uh, but I mean, we like Vancouver gets rid of Shockwave, right? And they bring in King, who's uh coming off of contenders, I think. Uh, but they
Yeah.
got a new player. They definitely are looking a little bit different here. Uh, but again, it's Vancouver. This team's not gonna be is not looking to be very strong.
I just the tank lineups in Vancouver is just not really that good. I just don't think any of their tanks will be able to pick up like Junker Queen to an extent that like any of Paris's could.
Yeah, and I do think
I
that
just
I think that one player who will be able to take advantage of Junker Queen is Vestola. I think Vestola is a very solid tank player and that a lot of people don't give enough credit to. But he's definitely not near a top echelon, but he's definitely better than anything Vancouver can pull out. And I think that's going to be what leads Paris to taking a pretty solid victory over the Vancouver Titans. Do you incline to disagree, or do you feel like that's a solid?
I agree. Um,
Here's another match that's pretty decisive. Vancouver, not Vancouver. I love talking about
no.
Vancouver today. The Shock and the Mayhem. Uh, Shock's gonna 3-0 Florida. I don't see this going any other way.
Yeah, just like the Gladiators. I mean, if the Glads are like the number one best team, Shock is like right at the foot of Gladiators right now. Like those teams are like so close in skill, it's almost like uh, you know, uncanny pretty much. So I
You know,
think any team that, again, isn't in the upper echelon is gonna struggle to even take a map off Shock.
and one thing that I just kind of thought of. You know what this what this San Francisco Shock squad kind of reminds me of? It reminds me a bit like the Philadelphia Fusion of, let's say, 2020. You know, Philly looked really good in in all of the regular season. They would take they would be able to beat teams like the Shock, and then when it just came to tournaments, they would just kind of not be able to perform as well. And here's where that kind of plays in. Shock is dominant in this regular season, but when it comes to the tournaments is when they kind of fall apart a little bit.
I mean,
So
Shock's shown they could like basically even win them basically. I mean,
so
if the
does
Gladiators were,
Fusion.
let's say, in another region, if the Gladiators were in another region, no one would even be able to stood up to the Shock. Like, I mean, they won through winners bracket, and they're on their way to reverse sweep.
But then they
It's like,
C9'd. That's not a
yeah,
Shock thing to
but
do, especially doing it
C9ing
twice.
isn't. It's not, fusion because they lost twice. I mean, if that's the case, every team that hasn't won is just a fusion.
But regardless, Shock, they're gonna dominate throughout this tournament. In the regular season before the actual tournament itself. That's pretty easy to say. Next up is the Dallas Fuel and the New York Excelsior. I mean, yeah, Dallas is winning this, but I really think that to go back on what you were talking about when we were on Dallas Glads was Dallas is just not gonna be like their ability to pick up this kind of meta is just not really there. And I don't think that they're going to be able to lose to the New York Excelsior, but I do think that it's going to be a close game.
I like that Nixel's getting both rematches against teams that went map 5-2 in the previous tournament. That nobody thought they'd go map 5-2.
And I think they're going to go map 5 against them again.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something?
It would be even funnier if they won one of these games, especially if they beat the Dallas Fuel. I think that'd be even funnier.
They almost did it once.
They almost did.
Well,
Is there anything else you want to say about this match?
no.
Alright then, finally. we have the Atlanta Reign and the Toronto Defiant. I don't see Toronto even taking them out. I really just don't.
I was about to see. I was about to like, or I thought you were gonna say I don't see who's gonna win this, and I was like, dog.
No, it's so completely obvious that Atlanta's gonna win this.
Yeah,
It will be
yeah.
a like winning the lottery if Toronto is even able to take a map off of Atlanta. Like this, Toronto doesn't stand a chance.
I
But
think
anything else you want to say about since I just cut you off?
uh, you know, I don't really need to. I was just gonna say Atlanta's like, they managed to break into the upper echelon. You know, pretty much higher than what they've done throughout the Overwatch League. So it's better than the mid Toronto Defiant.
I wouldn't even call Toronto mid. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I mean, like they're like dead center, like barely on the cusp of making tournaments right now.
Yeah, but if you were to compare them against like the East Region teams, I mean, I just Toronto. I think they would struggle against Guangzhou. Actually, that's a lie.
That's
They would
yeah,
definitely struggle against teams like
that's
Chengdu.
like saying they'd struggle. That's like saying they struggle against Vancouver, and we said they'd have that win. Charge is even easily worse than Vancouver.
I think just when it comes down to it, I think that Toronto, if they were in, if it were West and East region, they would definitely be the only teams that they would be above is the Valiant, the Charge, the Titans, and the Excelsior.
I think you're giving them a little too less credit. I think they have some decent moments. You know, I just think they're mid, and mid isn't good. It's just mid.
And I don't think they're good. Or they'd also be below Paris. Or they'd also be above Paris. Which does kind of put them close to the middle, but not necessarily. Puts them in the like lower quarter. But I mean, really, you would have to think about it. Toronto, they couldn't beat the Spark, they couldn't beat Dynasty, they couldn't beat the Dragons, and basically any team that's below them right now in West Region, they can beat. Other than that, they can't beat anyone higher than them. So to me, that's not a good team. A good team is one that could beat teams that are below
I
them, but
did
also ones that are above
I
them.
did I say they're a good team?
I wouldn't even say that about a mid team.
A mid team is a team that's just very average, and that can beat the players or that beat the teams they should, and doesn't really punch up that much, which is exactly what Toronto Defiant is.
Regardless, I just back to the conversation at hand. Toronto doesn't stand a chance against the Rain. Hawk is just. I think he's going to be a natural at Junker Queen, and I think that's kind of going to be the base of what the Rain kind of dominated with this tournament. So that is all that we have for the week one of the Summer Showdown. East region comes in at week two, so only one region to predict this week, as well as our crystal ball picks. I mean, really, this tournament seems like it's going to be probably the most exciting of all of the tournaments because Junker Queen is bringing in such a different meta that we've seen ever in the Overwatch League. So it's definitely looking like a lot of teams can definitely shake up the brackets. So we'll just have to wait and see. Is there anything else you have to add?
No. I'm just excited to see the new character in action. It's been such a long time since we've seen a new character in action. And I know that was just kickoff class basically, but I don't know, I kind of
Well,
feel
no,
like
it's mostly
forever.
mid-season madness. Because let's be honest, Sojourn just wasn't meta until the mid-season madness.
That's true.
So
I'm just saying when a new character was introduced.
yeah,
Technically
it's gonna be
kickoff
it's gonna be
class,
Decoy
but
syndrome. We're definitely gonna be seeing a lot of Junker Queen. And it's exciting to see what teams are going to be able to play very well and what teams are going to struggle. But that is all that we have for this Pick'ems video. You can always argue it in the comments or whatever. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next week.